Okay, recording in progress. Another episode of the Score and Compass podcast. Another part of our series, round 2022 of the Grand Lodge Candidate Series. We did this last year. We're doing this again this year, getting the chance to interview candidates from the Grand Lodge of Canada and the province of Ontario, candidates running for different offices at Grand Lodge. I've sent an invitation out to all the candidates, and they're all welcome to join and to have an interview done. And to any Grand Lodge of Canada in Ontario members watching this, there's information on how to register for voting in the comments, in the description below. I put some information on how to register for voting and information about Grand Lodge this year. And with that, Right Worshipful Brother Paul Isaac, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Worshipful Brother Adamson. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening and the invitation. I was really overwhelmed by the invitation to attend this evening, and I'll try to do as much as I can to let the brethren know that I am going to throw my hat in the ring for a candidate for Grand Lodge Committee of General Purposes. Again, I thank you. My name is Paul Graham Isaac. I hail from a little town out in the country called Shwegen, Ontario, just kind of southwest of Hamilton. And I lived here all my life. And I hail from a small country lodge in Hagersville, Ontario, Hiram number 319, which is on Highway 6 in between Port Dover and Hamilton. I've been a member there since 1986. I was initiated, passed, and raised in that lodge. When I first, I'll tell you a little story. I was intrigued by my father. He was a Mason as well. So as a youngster, I kind of watched him with his friends who were Masons. You know, they would get together and they would go off in another room, and then talk. So I as a youngster, I kind of knew there was something special with him. So I was intrigued. And as I got older, I grew more interested in Masonry, and he wouldn't tell me anything. He says, well, you're not of age. You're not of age. I'm not telling you this. I'm not telling you that. So I kind of had some ideas. So when I was of age of 21, I approached my dad and I says, I'd like to find out a little bit more about the Masons and possibly join. So he called a good friend of his. And at that time, maybe a couple years prior to my installation, you had to join a lodge where you were closest to, miles wise. Like if you were 10 miles to one lodge and 15 miles to another lodge, you had to go to the lodge which was closest to you. So he wasn't really sure about this. So he called a brother, and he says, where can Paul join? So he said, well, that kind of a bylaw, or I got to say bylaw, was no longer in effect. He says, bring him out to Hagersville. So I filled out an application, and lo and behold, I was accepted. So that was 1986. As a young member, I wasn't the most active in lodge, but I maintained to pay dues. I maybe meetings. Once I got to be a master mason, I never really attended lodge that much. And for the reason being is, I being a young father, um, young kids, I had to work. So I was rarely home. I hold a job as a construction electrician, and I belong to a trade union in Hamilton, Ontario, which dispatches me out to all over North America to go to work. So as a young man, I had to work, you know, to provide. So that's where I went. So lodge was kind of on a, you know, the back burner. You know, raising the kids and, you know, household stuff came first. So after I'd done this for many years, I got back into, I was back home for a while. I thought, I'm going to go back to the lodge. So I attended a meeting in Hagersville, and the guys were anxious to see me because all they knew was, you know, I didn't attend very much, and but I maintained my dues, and they were glad to see me. So I had a chance to be home, working at home. So I attended lodge more frequently, and I kind of got into the role of things again. Then I was asked, Paul, would you like to go through the chairs? So I says, and I knew it was a commitment, and I said, yes, I will. And right then and there, you know, I knew I was committed to, you know, to the lodge. So I started out and went through the chairs. I became master in 2007 was my first time. Then I went to work again in 2008, 2009, something like that. And I missed it. I missed the camaraderie. You know, I missed the guys, all the sister lodges. I missed the visitation. So when I came back home again from work, I got back into the swing of things again. And I would do various parts in the lodge. Excuse me. Do the parts and was active and fill in wherever I could as a past master. So I enjoyed that. 2017, I was asked to sit in the chair of King Solomon again, which I accepted. So it was 10 years from the first time to the second time I got in the chair of King Solomon. And then I repeated. I done another stint in 2018. So I had a 2-year term there. So I was in the chair of King Solomon for 3 years, a total of three years. And I enjoyed every minute of it. I had an opportunity to, I was really keen on masonry and, you know, the different aspects of it. And our term came up. We have in our district, we have lodges, like we have 12 lodges in our district. Every 3 or 4 lodges in a certain area have a rotation of district deputies. So my name came up, and back in 2018, because it was a year before I got in, I had to prepare. So it was 2018. I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. So I done all my my courses and everything, and I also fulfilled as being president of the. I was really involved in Masters, Past Masters, the Wardens Association of Brant District. I had gone through being the first vice, second vice, vice president, president. So I went all through that as well, and you know, knowledge I've gained, in that association was bar none, because they look after all the business of Brant District. So I was very keen on that. So lo and behold, I was nominated then for a district deputy in 2019, and I had my service team all picked out, and I done really well. We had we were shut down in March due to COVID in 2019, and I got through I believe 10 official visits in a district of 12 lodges, and in that period of time, I was getting to be quite the person, and within the district and in other districts as well. They had heard of me, and there was a little bit of insight there, and I was really overwhelmed with the popularity I got. Also the amount of introductions I was given, and it was really something else, and it was something I'll cherish all my life. So I thought, okay, I done a 2-year term as district deputy in Brant District.
Sorry to interrupt. What was it like for you as the district deputy, as a right worshipful? What was it like for you, especially near the start when in-person meetings were forced to, for good reason, but we had to suspend our in-person meetings, seeing COVID? What was it like for you as the DD, liaising with the lodges during that time period when there was so much? I think it's easy to forget just how much uncertainty there was at that, not just in Freemasonry, but in the world in general, but certainly in Freemasonry, just uncertainty as to how Masonry would survive, how it would proceed, how long COVID would last. What was it like for you as a DD navigating the in-person meeting suspensions and just the uncertainty around COVID at that time?
There was a lot of unanswered questions, uncertainty, and there was a lot of confusion over the future of our meetings, when we were going to proceed again. I've never received so many emails in all my life, from brethren, from lodge secretaries, masters, members. When are we going to get back? When are we going to get back? And Grand Lodge, they've done, outstanding job to keeping us informed of the next steps, because the uncertainty was, there was people coming from all over, explaining that it was going to be 2 months, 3 months. But Grand Lodge stated, this is what it's going to be. So I had to take those answers I received from Grand Lodge and transmit them to, the various lodges in our district, so they would have answers. Before that, before COVID, like, everything was smooth, and then all of a sudden, bam, March 12th, we were shut down, and people were, they were waiting to hear from me, what's the next step. So I found out as quick as I could, and to satisfy their wants and needs as far as masonry in Brant District in general, and what was going to be the future. And like I say, Grand Lodge was outstanding in giving me the answers, so I could satisfy the brethren in the district, and then keep things rolling. As we started getting more into COVID, I knew it wasn't going to be, 2 or 3 months, and then everything back to normal. Back in June of 2019, I had conversations with the webmaster of our district. And I thought, okay, masonry isn't going to die here in Brant District. What I'm going to do, and Zoom was just starting to come out. I heard about it, and it was introduced to me. I thought, okay, this is how we're going to do it. So I talked to the webmaster of the district, and I said, let's get a license and facilitate so that we can have regular lodge meetings in our district to the best of our ability as possible, so that we can keep the brethren, somewhat informed. Because basically all I was going to do at the start was information meetings, and that's all it was, all during my term as district deputy. And we had it was just basically a general purpose meeting.
Well, I mean,
With all
and
the
that,
lodges in our district, and
you
I'll
know,
tell you, all the lodges in our district participated. We had 12 lodges. We were given the webmaster was great. We sent out invitations, and the participation was outstanding in our district, and we had praise from the Grand Lodge as to the amount of participation that Brant District put out, and that was I'm not going to tap myself on the shoulder, but it was partly my doing. I can't take all credit, but it was one thing that I had done to facilitate that we keep masonry alive and well in Brant District.
we lost you. I just got we lost your face. I can hear you, but I can't see anymore.
Okay, there's is that better?
There we go. We got you back.
There we go.
And that's something that is,
This was long before, pardon me. This was long before we had facilitated this, long before Grand Lodge came out with, they came out with a go-to meeting, like a webinar, asking if anybody would want to participate. We had it set up before, we were even asked by Grand Lodge. And, we went through Grand Lodge to get all the, the yeses and nos and the do's and don'ts. And everything was all on the up and up. And there was rules to it, and it went quite smooth.
Well, that goes to something that is worth discussing. We've seen it a lot over the last 2 years, spurred primarily because of COVID and necessity. The integration of virtual or the integration of technology in Freemasonry to a greater extent. Zoom, such as your Zoom meetings, also the go-to meetings, also Grand Lodge using virtual voting, virtual education. Do you think that even though we in Ontario are returning and have returned in many cases to in-person meetings, do you think there's still a place, and how much do you think we will still in Freemasonry use or rely on tools such as Zoom and go-to meetings and virtual votings in our Masonic experience?
I believe, with technology, the way it is today, and the outcome of this, what this pandemic has done to society, that we need these tools such as Zoom, webinars, and podcasts, and it was introduced to us, and as a tool. So us as Masons, to keep our fraternity and keep things going, it's going to be a definite tool in the future, and it is proven quite encouraging two people to attend these meetings, and Grand Lodge sees this, and like, look at last year's communications, and the voting, which went quite well for them, I believe. They were
And
overwhelmed.
speaking of that, right, this year is interesting because it's kind of a combination. We have the virtual voting, and then we have the in-person Grand Lodge communication, I suppose,
Yes.
session, July 20th to 21st, Sheraton Park Hotel. What are your thoughts about this kind of combination, maintaining the virtual voting, but then also having the in-person sessions? Do you suspect, I mean, how much do you think moving ahead, we're going to see this combination of virtual and in-person at the Grand Lodge level?
I believe
whether it be
that
voting or-
I believe the voting will remain with us online. Like I was saying, like the turnout of voting online is, more than expected from Grand Lodge, because a lot of people don't want to commute. A lot of skepticism about, COVID yet, so they don't want to convene and with a large group of members. So the safety aspect of it, is the main key to this. And like I say, Grand Lodge has seen this, and I believe it's going to be a thing of the future, which it's amazing what like I say, technology has brought to us during this pandemic.
And knock on wood, because we never want to get too ahead of ourselves, but it seems as though the pandemic is slowly waning. Masonic in-person Masonic meetings are returning in your district and in your lodge, and just in your travels. What have you seen in terms of the return to in-person meetings? Are you sensing trepidation amongst members, excitement? How are people feeling about the return to in-person meetings, especially as more and more restrictions are lifted and mask mandates are lifted and things of that nature? Just what is the response been like from the membership? Fear, excitement, combination?
There's a lot of excitement because people have been sitting on the sidelines for 2 years. In our lodge, we've had since November last year, we've had 3 meetings, and the amount of brethren that came in were overwhelmed with the excitement of getting back in the lodge again. And then we were shut down for a little bit, and we maintained we picked up back up again on the Zoom. And I went to a memorial service here a couple weeks ago, Masonic memorial service, and there must have been maybe 50 or 60 brethren there, chomping at the bit, asking when we're going to get back in the lodge again. And I said, well, I don't have the answers for that, because some lodges are opening up, like you said, and some lodges aren't, but they can't wait. And everybody's chomping at the bit to get back, and we're gonna see what happens. But there's going to be skepticism from some members, and it's just as well as this Zoom. There was a lot of skepticism about that. They said, well, we don't want to conduct business, over a computer screen. And I can understand that. But there was no business, no ritual work done. All it was a committee of general purposes for each lodge. There was no, it was more or less a camaraderie of the lodges and visitors to get together, and it worked. And I can't wait for the day that, we can, once again, get back in the lodge, and it's coming soon. Um, it seems like in the fall time, it's going to be all systems go.
To
But,
what extent?
we have lodges in our district now that are, starting to open up slowly, and we're getting ready here in Brant District, as well as other districts, which is really good.
To what extent, and this is something I've been struggling with in my district, in my lodges, just with Freemasonry in general right now. To what extent do you think the excitement and the growth that we seem to be seeing, with a lot of applications coming through and a lot of lodges that are meeting again seem to be doing well turnout wise, and have a lot of applications and degrees? To what extent do you think that excitement is real versus illusory? The metaphor I've used is, if you've got a stream or a river and you basically put a dam in that river for 2 years and then remove the dam, it's going to seem as though suddenly the river's, really moving or really growing, but it's just because there's been a dam there for 2 years. Right. And in the case of, for example, applications, a lot of lodges have been telling me that they've received a lot of applications, but I'm not sure if it seems to me that if you actually look at the average number of applications they get, it's not that they have more applications than usual. It's just they haven't done any degrees for 2 years, so they've all backed up. So it's hitting them all at once. And it seems as though it's perhaps bigger than it is. I'm just curious, do you think this excitement will last? Like once the fall comes, once people start to get back into the actual routine of having to go to meetings, and then everything else comes back in life and they have to balance that with work, with family. Do you think it's something that can last, this excitement? Or how do, even better question, how do we as Freemasons make sure that this excitement lasts and we don't eventually revert to what it was perhaps before, which was at times, struggling for membership, things of that nature?
This, what we're going to experience, excuse me, is encouragement. We have also in our district X number of applicants, and they're all split up within the 12 lodges as to where they want to join and stuff like that. So I was part of that during the pandemic here, and with Grand Lodge to facilitate these new members. I've later found out that these members have been, some of them have been balloted for, and I even attended a lodge not that long ago, and they're looking forward to the encouragement of getting back in the swing of things, and just the planning stages. So in the planning stages, these masters of the lodges will have to get back in the swing of things again, and like I was saying about encouragement, it all has to be timed out correctly so that they don't burn themselves out, and then after this is all done, they're going to say, well, what happened here? We've got these members and now look at us. So masters and as well as members need to space their time out here wisely and over a period of time, and so that they don't have a lull in their lodge. And I believe every lodge in our district is going to look forward to new members, as well as other lodges in Ontario, which is excellent.
How much of a problem do you think that is in Freemasonry? The challenge of burnout of lodges, or just an individual Mason or Masons, not scheduling their time well and becoming just so burnt out that they are not able to commit 100%, either because they're a member of 5 lodges plus 2 rights, plus they've got their kids, plus they've got their job, and it seems that that's something that's been brought up to me by older Masons in my own Masonic career. The danger of not scheduling yourself or not taking care of your time properly and then burning yourself out to the point where you're not able to commit 100% to the craft or to any part of your life. Do you think that that's a problem, or how much of a problem do you think that is for Masons that you've seen in your district or just in your Masonic career?
It all comes down to, as I was saying, is planning and, not getting yourself, worked up, because that's when you lose faith in members. Members are gonna come back to you and say, well, didn't we just do this degree last month and now we're gonna do it again? I think maybe I might be absent that night. So you got to make a change. Lodges are going to have to adapt to this and change it up so that there's something different. Like I understand that the degree work has to be done, but it all in the same words, it has to be mixed so that the members don't feel overwhelmed on their responsibilities to the lodge, doing the same thing over this month, same thing next month. That's what'll get the, that's what'll burn out the members. They're going to lose interest, and you don't want that. So you have to make the members have to make it interesting as to what, okay, this is what we want to do. Let's get some input. Let's do this, let's do that this month. We can do that next month. Then we'll come back to this. We can come back to that. This is what planning, strategic planning needs to be done in lodges.
And going back to the word you used earlier, you mentioned encouragement.
Yes.
Where does that encouragement need to come from? Does it need to come from the Grand Lodge level, from the district deputy level, masters, other members? Where does that encouragement need to come from, and where does it need to go? Do we need to be encouraging our applicants, our masters, from where and to where, and where do we need to see more encouragement, do you think, in the craft?
Encouragement, like it comes from the individuals. When we meet at the meetings of general purpose of our lodges, there has to be a leader. So that leader needs to have knowledge of each member that's in attendance. And then that leader needs to know exactly his boundaries of, yes, he can do this, yes, he can do that. Okay, so, and then the encouragement level comes in. When you have a group of men that are enthused about something, they'll put forth their best effort possible to see that is done to a T. And, it all comes, like I say, back from a great leader and from the Committee of General Purpose with various lodges. And the encouragement will eventually and should grow to other members, to keep the ball rolling. And without the encouragement, like lodges are just going to do the same thing. But you have to have somebody in there to facilitate and get that ball rolling and keep it rolling. I found that out.
Is that, you think, one of the main functions of a Grand Lodge in any jurisdiction? To provide encouragement to the individual lodges and the districts, and even at the Masonic, at the level of individual Masons, to provide encouragement to keep going, especially when things can seem, uh, uh, scary or a little bit dire, like during COVID. The last couple of years, to provide that encouragement to the lodges to keep going and find ways to get through the more challenging times?
I don't think it's so much on the part of the Brant Lodge. It'd be more on the lodges and their particular lodge and their district. Every member of a lodge, there's, as you know, and as well as I know, there's certain individuals in lodges that are dependable and are knowledgeable and can take that ball and make it roll. These are the guys that every lodge needs. And this is where the encouragement starts, because, they can facilitate and organize events in the lodge, and put their wisdom together, and get the ball rolling here. So that's where the encouragement would come from certain individuals in the lodges.
And yeah, I think that's a really good point that you bring up, right? It's one thing for a lodge. It's one thing for those individuals in a lodge who are dependable to do the work, but they also have to take the time to encourage others to do that work as well, or to find what work they want to do within the craft, because everybody may have their own unique interests and skills and abilities which they could apply to the craft, and which could help it grow, whatever it may be. It could be like the webmaster that you talked about earlier, right? And providing those Zoom opportunities. I think that's a really good point. Do you think, and that is even something, I suppose, that could start at the applicant level, when they're first putting their application, making sure that the lodge spends time to get to know them and talk to them about not just why they want to join Masonry, but what type of skills and abilities they have that could perhaps be of benefit to the craft. And then when they join, encouraging them to use those skills and abilities for the betterment of the lodge and the craft. As district deputy, as a master, do you think, or how would you grade lodges? How do you think lodges are doing in that aspect of the craft, in the vetting process and in getting to know applicants and working with them as they begin their Masonic career, especially now that we seem to have so many applications coming through and degrees coming through? How do you think we're doing in terms of getting to know these people and these candidates before their initiation?
Well, I was involved here on a few general purpose meetings where we had done a Zoom meeting with applicants, that weren't members. They were invited. We were given dispensation from Grand Lodge to have members attend meetings, and there was no business. There was no degree work being done. They were just in the audience, to and introduced as a possible candidate, and this was the first step. If they show an interest, we would welcome them. So we got to know candidates before we even balloted for them. So getting to know, that the candidates is the key, because we've seen so many in our terms here that they've gotten to the first degree, we never see them again. We can't have that. we have to learn to retain these members. The way I look at it is, we as members of the lodge are like customer service representatives. we have a new customer come into a lodge, that was initiated. He's a future to our lodge. So we have to look after that. We have to look after our future. We just can't, let him sit on the burner there and let him do work by himself. We have to make him warm, welcome, and do anything possible to keep him back in lodge. And this is what we need to do. And as customer service reps, we have to guarantee that this candidate, is happy, with what he's getting. So masonry, we have to make it as interesting as possible for him so that he doesn't lose interest. And this is a key. And it's working, and we have to put more thought into lodges have to keep more thought into retaining members. I went to a speech one time, and there was an officer talking about.
Sorry, before you go on, I want to ask you if you could expand on the word retain.
Yes.
What do you mean by retain? Because this came up in another interview I had. They were talking about an organization, and they said they had very good membership retention rates. And I asked, well, by retention, do you mean people pay their dues, but you never see them, versus retain as in they, actively attend the meetings? When you talk about retaining a member, what do you mean by retaining? What does retention mean to you?
That a member keeps coming back. He'll come out to the general purpose meetings. He can see the business of the lodge. He comes out to the monthly meetings. He helps out at the barbecues, stuff like that. He's really showing an interest. So we have to keep them interested for retention.
Sorry, I interrupted your train of thought. You're at a meeting.
Yeah, well, I was at a meeting, and the speaker there, he said, "Listen," he says, "I've seen this, and everybody's seen this in their day. Is we bring new members in, on the very first night they come in the lodge, everybody's all handshakes, giving them pats on the back, and kind of teasing them. So he goes through his first degree. Okay, now he's going to fellowcraft. Same thing, not as much as the first night, but he's still, hi, how you doing, brother? By the time he reached Master and Mason, nobody knows him. He's sitting in the anteroom by himself. Nobody knows him anymore. So that guy is sitting there thinking, what happened here? What did I get myself into? It wasn't like this a year ago. What happened? How come, they're not, more cordial to me? This is what we have to keep doing is, this is, well, it all comes down to retention. We got to get our mindset straight so that we maintain these members. And this is very true about, like I was saying, about the people we see come into lodge, and they're given a warm welcome, and all of a sudden it dies off.
Well, and I like very much how you define retention, because I think a lot, probably if you define retention as simply a member staying on the books, we probably have in Freemasonry the over 90% retention, in the sense that I know life members who got a life membership, or I know of, I should say, life members, they got a life membership in the 80s. So technically we have retained them as members since 1980, whatever it was, when they got the life membership, but I've never met them. And I joined lodge in 2007,
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to define retention as, not taking a demit, well, that's fine. But I think you're right to point out, like, that's not sufficient for retention. Retention is that candidate, is that Mason actually attending and active in lodge, even if it's not, even if his being active is just attending and sitting and listening and watching, and people see him. That's retention, you know. Failing to, just because you don't demit, I don't know if you can count that as a retained member, even though we do oftentimes in Freemasonry. So I like that as a definition of retention.
Yeah. And this is something we need to strive to work on, you know, or because we need to bring our numbers back up. And so let's say that candidate, you know, is really in the swing of things, and masonry is, you know, is his new you know fraternity, and he's well welcomed, you know, and stuff like that. He in turn may bring in another candidate, one of his friends. Say, listen, I'm in this fraternity, and you know, it's great. So it could be revolving doors here, and we have to. This is what brings the membership up. Is from people asking and you know, kind of telling their experiences about being a Mason. Like there's do's and don'ts to it. Don't get me wrong, but you know, it has its perks, and people are very intrigued by, you know, that we all we're Masons, and you know, then they start asking questions, and when they ask questions, well, you can kind of get the idea which way they want to go, whether it is nosy or, you know, very intrigued. And if they, I've known people to say, "Well, I didn't know what to do." That's another thing. I didn't know who to ask about joining. Well, you come to the right place, because we can answer questions for you. If you have, we can do our best to facilitate you. In our district, we have open lodges to the public. One lodge was doing a breakfast once a month to the public, and they would tour the lodge, and people didn't know what they were allowed in there. You know, it's because they knew that men with suits showed up once a month to go to meetings. Other than that, that's all they knew. And they said, "Oh, this is great. You know, are you guys taking any members?" And they brought in a couple of guys. You know, this is what needs to happen. We have to get out there and, you know, dig around. And it's working.
What to you is the the best part of being a Freemason, or of your Masonic journey thus far?
I wanted to see what my father saw, because, like I said, I was very intrigued as a youngster. I wanted to follow the same Masonic journey that he did. Well, actually, I went steps further than he did. He was never a master of lodge, which I was, and when I got into the Scottish Rite, I wanted to see that aspect of it too, which I did, and that was, you know, fulfillment to me. And then I just got into it more, being an officer in our lodge, and then being a Grand Lodge officer. I just, you know, I was just very intrigued by it, and still am. And I'm overwhelmed. There was a couple years ago when I got elected district deputy, and I had a call from the grand historian, and he said to me, he says, "A total stranger to me." He says, "Are you Right Worshipful Brother Paul Isaac?" I says, "I am." He says, "Do you have some time on your hands?" I said, "I do." So he says, he introduced his name, and he said, "I was a grand historian in Grand Lodge." And I said, "Okay." And then he went on and on and on. He says, "Paul, did you know?" This was very intriguing to me. He says, "Paul, do you know that you were the first Native American ever to be a district deputy in Ontario. And I said, no, I didn't know that. He says, well, he says, I've done some research on you. And he says, you are. And he says, I've also done some other research on you. And I said, oh, yeah, wow. I didn't know this guy was FBI or, you know, RCMP or because he was doing all this research on me. Not that I got nothing to hide. But anyways, he says, I've also done some other research. He says, I think you're the first Native American in North America. So I said, well, I don't know about that. He says, well, I'm looking into it. And he says, things are 99.9% sure that you are.
Sorry, first Native American district deputy in North
Yes.
America?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to
Yeah.
say, our district boasts Chief Tecumseh as a past member. And I know some other First Nations Masons, but so to your knowledge then, you're the first First Nations district deputy in North America. That's very, very cool.
Yeah, so I notified Grant Lodge about this because I was very intrigued. And they looked into it. The Grand Secretary looked into it. And they said, okay, we'll acknowledge you that you are the first in Ontario, but North America, we really don't know. Let's just leave it there for now. So then I got a call from the newspapers. I had a call from the local newspapers wanting to do an interview on me. So I said, okay. And lo and behold, in our lodge, in my mother lodge, we had an editor that owns a newspaper, a local newspaper. He said, I know these people, Paul. He says, well, I'll get in touch with them. And he said, we'll do an article on you. So I said, okay. So they done a page article on me, and it was in, I believe, the Hamilton Spectator, Brantford Expositor, and I'm not sure if it made it out to the Ontario Mason magazine or not. But I have a clipping here that they sent me, and it's in, it's all in wood grain, and it's a wall hanger about the article. And I was very intrigued by that, and overwhelmed. And that was a milestone. That was very good.
As it definitely was a milestone and something to be very proud of. So since that time then, have you, to your knowledge, have you learned of any other First Nations district deputies in North America, or to your knowledge, is it still you're the only one of which
As far as I know, to this date, as far as I know, like after I spoke to Grand Lodge, they didn't want to open up a can of worms here, and I just left it at that. But as far as I know, I still am, and I'll leave it at that. And I was because people were wondering. I'm not sure if you knew in our district, Joseph Brant. He was a famous Mason, and he had ties with the lodge in England, as well as Hamilton, as well as Brantford, and he was a master, and that's as far as he got, was just a master of the lodge. Other than that, people were thinking that he might have been a district deputy or maybe even a grand master in his day, but he wasn't. Historian done some research on him, and all he was the master, and that was that was it. But it was very overwhelming, and I think about that a lot.
As you should, and well deserved to be thinking about. Something that I've been thinking about, and I've asked other people who've been on the podcast, other Masons, you know, it's hard to predict the future, obviously, but I'm going to ask you to do that anyways. Looking into the future, what are some of the both challenges that you think the craft may face, and also what are some of the opportunities that you think the craft may face in the coming months and years and even decades?
I think some of the challenges we're going to face is, getting slowly up to speed as to where we were pre-COVID, with the amount of attendance in lodges. It's going to be a struggle at first, but I think once we get set and the coast is clear, it's just going to be full steam ahead. But until that time, it's going to be a challenge. We've heard a lot of lodges go dark through COVID, and there's been a lot of amalgamations with COVID, and that's going to be a challenge there to to get things up and rolling where we were pre-COVID. And some of the things we could look for in the future is how to extend our technology, like with the Zoom, the voting, stuff like that. This is all new to us, and we have to encourage, and it's working for members. Okay, this is going to be part of our future. Technology is we're getting overrun here with technology. So this is something we have to face, and whether we like it or not, we have to face reality and say, okay, this is the way it's going to be. And this is something that we have to look forward to, and it's a good change. It's just going to take some time, to adapt to these changes, because as we know, there's a lot of old-fashioned people. I'll never do this. I'll never do that. I don't want to do this. I'm not going to look at no computer. But yet they got a cell phone in their hand. 99% of people all have cell phones. They have that bit of, technology in their hands. But yet, they won't, use a computer or stuff like that. But it's going to be a sign of our times, and that's going to be reality.
I agree with that 100%. And do you think that is just a matter of time? Like, as Freemasonry, as we use technology more and more, as it becomes more and more integrated into the craft, people will just get used to it, and kind of those challenges will lessen. And even the older guys who, like you say, it can be hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Eventually it'll become so commonplace that it's just will become part of the craft and an accepted part of the craft.
I believe so, to a certain extent. For general purpose meetings, stuff like that, there's a time and place for these. And as the coast clears, we're going to kind of eventually wean out of these Zoom meetings and, get back to in-person meetings. But again, it's just going to take a little bit of time and encouragement. But we'll get there again. You watch.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me and join Screen Compass. I just appreciate you very much taking the time, because I know your time is precious. I know you're going to be part of the Meet the Candidates night coming up, but hopefully this will give people watching a chance to learn a little bit more about not just you, but just about Freemasonry in your district and Freemasonry in Ontario in general. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Well, thank you again for the invitation, and I really enjoyed this evening, and I hope to see you Saturday night. I'm looking forward to that podcast, and I'm I'm grateful, that I can participate in these.